friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I am really excited about today's video. We are going to be talking about my TBR for March, as well as a ton of recommendations that will fit the 5 challenges that Katie and I have given you. If you're not familiar with Middle Grade March, I will link down below the announcement video, but basically it's a 1 month long readathon where we, Katie from Life Between Words and I, just want to encourage you to read more middle grade. For some of you, that might be picking up one middle grade book. For others of you who already read a bit of middle grade here and there, picking up a little bit more. For others of you, it might be reading only middle grade during the month of March. It's totally up to you. We have 5 challenges, but they are just suggestions or guides to help choose books that you may not have picked on your own. I have a ton of books to talk about today, and so I just want to jump right in. This year in 2019, I'm doing my TBRs a little different, and that's not going to change just because it's Middle Grade March. I have a ton of books here to talk about, and we'll see what I actually get to as the month goes on. Now, last year, I did give myself the challenge of reading a book a day during Middle Grade March, and I came really close. I got 29 books. I have a feeling I may try that again this year because I just have so many books that I want to read. But I do have 2 that are not middle grade that I will be starting at least in March. The first one is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and this is a book that, this is one of the classics that I want to read this year. I do have 5 classics that I hope to read during 2019, and this is one of them. When I saw on Instagram someone offering to start a buddy read for Anna Karenina, I had to jump right in. So we're taking it pretty slow. The book is broken up into 8 different parts, and we'll be reading 1 part a week. So I will only get about halfway through in the month of March, which is perfect. I also have another buddy read of The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which is also a chunker. I haven't looked through this to separate it out at all yet to know how many pages I should try to aim for each day, but this is another one that maybe I will attempt to go through in the month of March as well. Then we have the 2 books that are for my Goodreads read along, and also one of them is the group read that Katie and I are encouraging everyone to read with us, and we will have a discussion on an Instagram Live at the end of the month. And that is Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Auxier. I'm really excited about this. It's about a young girl who is a chimney sweep in Victorian London. In the course of her work, she comes across the monster. It sounds like it's going to be really good. I've heard a few really good reviews of this already, so I'm really looking forward to this discussion both in my Goodreads group and as we read it together as a group for all of middle grade Marchers, if you so choose. Because middle grade books tend to be quick reads, I did want to have 2 books for my Goodreads read along pick this month, and so I also have Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech. This is a Newbery Medal winner, which I kind of have in the back of my mind goal of, in my lifetime, I would like to have read all of the Newbery winners. So you will see a couple of them in this video today, but I've just heard so many good things about this, especially from Katie at Life Between Words. This is one of her favorite middle grade books. I really don't know very much about it, but I'm looking forward to reading it along with the people in my Goodreads group. So if you're interested in joining in this one, pick it up and come along. The link to that group will also be down in the description box. The other 2 that don't necessarily fit in a category that I'm going to talk about today are ones that were recommended to me by you guys. So every month I try to read some of those recommendations. I did show you recently my TBR cart where I keep all of them, but I did have 2 middle grade books that were included in that list. One of them is a reread, and it's also a Newbery Medal winner. I have read this quite a long time ago before I started using Goodreads, so technically Goodreads has it listed as unread. But that's Bridge to Terebithia. I know this one's going to break my heart. I have seen the movie many, many years ago, but again, this will be a reread, but I'm looking forward to rereading that. And then one that I haven't yet read is Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. Now I know there's also March Mystery Madness is another month-long readathon that happens in March. Some of you may be looking to participate in both Middle Grade March and March Mystery Madness, so having books where there's a little bit of a mystery involved is a perfect solution for that. It's about this young girl who kind of keeps spy notes in this notebook of hers, but then her notebook goes missing and ends up in the wrong hands, where she's written a lot of things about people that she knows. So just sounds like a cute story, and I can't believe that I've never read it. What's the matter with me? So now we're moving on to the 5 categories, and I don't normally do this, but I will put a list down below of each of the 5 categories and all the books that I mentioned for those categories. A good majority of the books that I'm going to talk about I have not yet read. I will try to have 1 or 2 at least from each category that I can recommend from my personal reading experience. But there's just so many that I want to read as well, that I wanted to just kind of highlight what I have out from the library or on my shelves that I hope to read this month. So the first category is a nonfiction book, or a book that is based on true events. Last year I read quite a few. I mean, historical fiction is one of my favorite genres, so I love finding middle grade historical fiction as well. And last year I read The War That Saved My Life, which is about children in World War II being sent away from London to live in the countryside, so kind of being evacuated from the city. This is about a young girl who has club feet, I believe, so this also could fit for a diversity challenge as well this month. But this one was fantastic, and I do hope to read the sequel, The War I Finally Won, this month. Another one that I loved last year is Echo, which is a chunker, but it's middle grade. It's a pretty quick read. This is a historical fiction, somewhat with a little touch of, I don't know what you call it, magical realism. There's a little bit of a fairy tale element to it. There are 3 different stories in here, all connected by this sort of magical harmonica. So music plays a big part of it. If you're looking for an audiobook for the month, this is the one I would recommend, because I've heard clips of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but it's spectacular, and the music is a part of the audiobook, which is so much fun. So this one is a highly recommended book for me. I have a few actual nonfiction middle grade that I'm hoping to maybe get to this year. One of them is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind by William Kamkwamba and Brian Mealer. This is about a young boy in an African village whose family has been devastated because of this famine, and he has access to some kind of a library and learns how to build a windmill, and ends up saving or being a lifesaver for his town and his family, because he builds this windmill which provides them with power and energy that they need. Sounds really good. I have the young reader edition of Lion, A Long Way Home, which is the story of a young Indian boy who is separated from his family, ends up being adopted to an Australian family, and as an adult or young man tries to find his birth family. The movie was spectacular, and I really look forward to reading the book. I didn't actually know I was purchasing the young reader edition. I didn't look carefully enough, but ends up being perfect for middle grade March. And then I have a World War II memoir called The Boy on the Wooden Box by Leon Layson. And this involves Schindler's List, which was a very popular movie in the 90s, and I love it. And I love World War II anything, so this is definitely up my alley. I was just recently sent a historical fiction middle grade called Boy from Berlin. This is by Nancy McDonald, and very sweet. Nancy herself signed the book for me. But yeah, this is based on true facts as well. She has an author's note at the back that explains what is true and what was fictionalized. I'm excited about this one. It's also very short, which will help with my book a day. I'm really looking forward to reading this. And then not a memoir, but also kind of based on true events, is the Little House on the Prairie series, which I should have put with the books that I've read. But this is by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is kind of talks about early America and life as a pioneer. Moving on to the second challenge, we have to read a book with a character that is non-human, either a main character or a very important character that is not a human. Last year, one of my favorite books that I read during middle grade March was Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate, and in this book, the main character is this tree called Red. This is such a sweet story. I laughed, I cried. It's so tender. It deals with bullying a little bit and prejudice and children building bonds that help to teach the adults, which I love. Such a sweet story. Katherine Applegate also has The One and Only Ivan I've read from her, and this year out from the library I have 2 more of her books because I just love her. Crenshaw is one of her more popular ones, maybe one of her more older ones as well, where this little boy begins talking with this imaginary cat who is a big part of the story. And then also kind of a fantasy that she has recently written. This is, I think, her newest. It's called Endling the Last. And I think all of the characters in this, I believe, are some type of animal creature. This one's a little bit thicker, but I'm looking forward to reading more from Katherine Applegate this year. Another one of my favorite middle grade authors is Kate DiCamillo, and she has written so many books that I love, including The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, about a little toy bunny who is vain and proud and doesn't realize how good he has it until one day he gets separated from his owner and has to go through all of these adventures that teach him a lot of lessons. It has a lot of heart. It's very sweet. But yes, the main character is a China doll bunny. Kate DiCamillo also has written Because of Winn-Dixie, which is one of the main characters is this dog, Winn-Dixie, obviously, which is also a movie. Kate DiCamillo has written quite a few books that have non-human main characters. A newer book that I have out from the library is The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. This one involves a robot who's the main character who wakes up or comes to life on this island and has no idea how they got there, and has to try to figure out what to do, how to survive. There's a storm, a bear attack. She has to figure out just how to live on this island, befriending the animals that are there, and it just sounds like a fun little adventure story. I also picked up for my shelves a classic, The Cricket in Times Square by George Selden. This is also a really short book. I know that I read this when I was quite young, but I don't really remember it, so this might be one that I just kind of pick up as a quick read throughout the month. So now moving on to fantasy. I could obviously go on and on about fantasy books because there are so many fantastic middle grade fantasy, and I'm actually not going to show you Nevermore and Wondersmith because I don't own them yet, but Nevermore. If you haven't read Nevermore, please start there, or start with last year's group pick, which was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This is such a fantastic fantasy book. So many themes that adults will love. I just can't recommend this highly enough. So read this and read Nevermore if you haven't yet. A couple other fantasy books that I've read quite a while ago, actually, and one that I read last year. Howl's Moving Castle I did read last year by Diana Wynne Jones. Really fun fantasy. The City of Ember by Jean Duprow. This is about a world, almost a dystopian, so maybe a little bit sci-fi, but there's a world underground because there was some kind of catastrophic event that wiped out civilization above ground, and so all of these people live underground. Just about that story. I guess that's still technically fantasy, right? And The Giver is another sort of dystopian that also has won a Newbery. This is by Lois Lowry. Such a good book. Also has a movie. Actually, all 3 of these have movies that go with them, so that would be kind of fun if you wanted to read the book and then watch the movie. Some new ones to me that I have not yet read, but have heard such wonderful things about. Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. This would also fit the diversity challenge for this year. In this book, we have a young girl named Min Lee, and she works in the field with her grandfather, who tells her all of these tales and stories, but then she comes to find out that there might be some truth to them. So there's some dragons and enchanted forests and a lot of Chinese folklore in this book, so I'm really excited about that one. There are quite a few books, such as Land of Stories by Chris Colfer. This is book 1, where kids get to travel into books. I know Pages & Co. I can't remember the author, is a brand new one that I really want to read because the little girl in that one goes into Anne of Green Gables. I believe this one, they go more into fairy tale type stories, but stories within stories is a fun trope in middle grade books. I also have Savvy, which is about a little girl who learns she has some magic powers, I believe, by Ingrid Law. And then Sharon Creech, I have another book from her called The Castle Corona. which is about this kingdom where the rich are very rich and the poor are very poor, and until something comes to upset the balance of things. See how that one goes? I could go on and on about fantasy, but we still have 2 more categories to talk about. I think one of the hardest challenges this time around is going to be this next category, which is to find a book written in verse. Last year I read 2 books written in verse: Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson and Inside Out and Back Again by Tanha Lee. I don't own either of those, but I would definitely highly recommend both of them. They're fantastic. But I wanted to find some other options for you because I know those 2 tend to be talked about quite a bit. I actually have another Newbery winner on my shelves that I would like to read. This is the one that I hope to read first for this category, and it's Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse. This takes place in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, and a tragedy hits this family, and this young girl has to make her way through it and figure out. A lot of people are leaving because of the dust storms. It just sounds like it's going to be a really good one. And these will be relatively quick reads because they're written in verse. I have this one called Catching a Storyfish by Janice N. Harrington. And this is about a young girl who moves to a new town. Oh, she moves from the south to the north and has a really strong accent. Very, very talkative at home, loves to tell stories with her grandfather. However, when she moves to this new town, she gets made fun of because of her accent. Kids can be pretty resilient, but kids can also be pretty mean sometimes. This is just the story of her learning to find her voice, and it involves a lot of story and playing with words. I read through a little bit here and there. It just sounds like it'd be a good one. If you're a Little House on the Prairie fan, you may be interested in picking up May Be by Caroline Starr Rose. I have heard that this is similar to Little House on the Prairie, only it takes place in Kansas City. So it's about this young girl whose parents either die or abandon her in a sod house, and she has to learn how to survive. I believe she's like 10 or 11 years old. It's gonna be a good one. I also have another Newbery winner, Crossover by Kwame Alexander, and I believe he has another one following this as well. This one is about twin brothers who love basketball and just are trying to navigate middle school, basically, and learning that life is not necessarily all about what happens on the court. This has won a Newbery, so I know it's going to be fantastic. I hope that it's going to be fantastic. I guess winning doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great. I have Unbound here, which is by Anne Berg, and I believe this one is about a family or a group of children who escape a slave plantation in the South and end up have to face wild animals in the wilderness as they're trying to run away, and end up in this community in a swamp of other people who are trying to stay off the grid. So also sounds really good. And finally, in this category of books written in verse, I have Forget Me Not by Ellie Terry, which is about a young girl who has Tourette's syndrome, which is so interesting. I don't think I've ever read a book about someone with Tourette's, so this should be just interesting. And also a lot of these actually could fit into the diversity category as well, which is our final category. So I've pulled out just a few. Actually, most of the ones I have here are from the library. And the first one I want to talk about is this year, 2019's Newbery Medal winner, and that is Mercy Suarez Changes Gears by Meg Medina. This story is about this young girl, Mercy, who is a scholarship student at a private school. She's going to be dealing with a lot of school kind of issues, which any middle grade contemporary is often going to have school kind of issues to deal with. But also her grandfather becomes ill in the course of this story, so it's also about her family. I heard that has some humor and a lot of heart, and it won the Newbery, so I'm very interested in reading that one. Next, I have The Lions of Little Rock by Kristen Levine. This book takes place in 1958 in Little Rock, Arkansas, when schools are segregated, and these 2 girls, one white and one black, become really good friends and determine that nothing is going to separate them. This is one that I do own because I heard it come highly recommended last year. So I'm looking forward to reading that one, hopefully first for this category. We'll see. I have by Beth Vrabel. The next one I want to talk about is Caleb and Kit. This is about a little boy who has cystic fibrosis and what that is like, trying to make friends and navigate what life is like with treatments and all of those things. And I believe maybe an imaginary friend is a part of this as well. I'm not quite sure. but I had heard good things about that one last year. I just heard about this one recently. It's called Front Desk by Kelly Yang, and it's about a Chinese immigrant family who runs a hotel, and they also hide refugees in this hotel, and they are just the managers of the hotel. They don't own it, and so this could get them into a lot of trouble, and this young girl helps to run the front desk. Yeah, I've heard that this was a really good one. I did pick up the sequel. I don't know if it's a sequel. I picked up another book by Tanha Lai. She's the author of Inside Out and Back Again, which is a book written in verse about being a Vietnamese refugee family to the United States. And this also is about a Vietnamese refugee family who travel back to Vietnam one summer. So I really loved that first book by her. This one is not written in verse, but if you've read the other one and you really like it, I would recommend picking up this one. At least I'm going to give it a try. We'll see. And finally, I have an epistolary book. This is a book written in letters called One Good Thing About America. And this is about a girl from Africa, Anais. And in Africa, she's really good at English, and her family moves her to America, where she all of a sudden feels like she doesn't know English at all. So different. Things just don't make sense when she moves here, and everything that she had learned kind of flies out the window. So she writes letters to her grandmother, who challenges her to find some good things about America. So this should be an interesting story about this young girl writing to her grandma about the experience of moving from Africa to America. Also a pretty short one. This one's by Ruth Freeman. That's it. The funny thing is I still have probably 12 more books out on my shelf over here. I'm keeping them on a shelf right over there. This year I'll show you that eventually throughout the month. I don't know what I'm gonna get to. I do know, where's my first 5? These are the first 4 middle grades that I'm gonna get to, along with the 2 non-middle grade books. Those are kind of the first plan of attack, but I hope throughout all of these books you have found some that might sound interesting to you. Some, if you were having a hard time coming up with a book written in verse, hopefully you found something there as well. I have another video coming right on March 1st that's going to be recommendations from other booktubers, similar to what I did last year, but with all new people. I'm so excited. So they have some good recommendations coming your way as well. Let me know down in the comments, what are some books that you're hoping to read during middle grade March? Are you planning on reading 1 or 2 or 10 or all middle grade? Let's chat about it down in the comments. You know I love talking to you down there. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be talking to you in another video very soon. Bye.